I'm Cynthia, 38, and last week, my role as the family anchor, it shattered. The trust I'd poured my heart into keeping solid, it blew up into a full-on betrayal at our so-called family meeting. My parents, who I thought would always have my back, demanded I stay quiet about their refusal to help with Layla's surgery, and when I pushed back, the room went dead silent. "You're ungrateful," my mom screamed, with my sister and her kids staring like I'd just set the table on fire. But here's the truth. Their rejection didn't break me, it lit a fire. I'm not just fighting back, I'm about to unravel their lies and change everything for me and Layla. A quick note, this story is copyrighted by the YouTube channel Guest Stories. Reposting, revoicing, or editing this content without permission constitutes copyright infringement. Thank you for respecting original creative work. Now, back to the story. It started with a phone call that felt like a punch to the gut. Layla, my 18-year-old daughter, needed emergency surgery, a rare heart condition, the kind that makes doctors use words like urgent and life-threatening. I'd already drained my savings, maxed out 2 credit cards, and sold my old car to cover her medical bills. The hospital needed $50,000 more, and I had nowhere left to turn but my parents. They'd always been the ones with the safety net, the ones who bailed out my sister Karen when her business tanked, or when her kids needed private school tuition. So I called them, voice shaking, and explained Layla's situation. I wasn't asking for a handout, just a loan, something to bridge the gap until I could figure things out. Mom's voice was cold, clipped. "Cynthia, we can't just throw money at every problem. You should have planned better." Planned better? I'd been planning my whole life around keeping Layla safe, working double shifts at the diner, skipping vacations, missing sleep. Dad chimed in, "We're not a bank, Cynthia, you need to handle this yourself." I stood in my kitchen gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is for Layla's life," I said. Silence. Then Mom said they had other commitments. I hung up, my hands trembling, feeling like the floor was caving in. 2 days later I got a text from Karen, a photo of Mom and Dad grinning on a beach with her and her kids, captioned, "Family vacay in Maui." They'd left the same day I begged for help. I stared at the photo, my stomach twisting. Maui, private villas, first-class flights, the works. They had the money, just not for Layla. I sat on the couch, Layla asleep upstairs, her soft breathing echoing in my mind. I couldn't cry, I was too angry. My parents had chosen a vacation over my daughter's life. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms, and swore I'd never let them hurt us like this again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every sacrifice I'd made for this family. Every holiday I worked so they could have their perfect gatherings, every time I bit my tongue when they praised Karen's success, while ignoring mine. I wasn't just hurt, I was done. Done with their lies, their favoritism, their utter disregard for Layla. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to make this right, not just for me, but for my daughter, who deserved better than their cruelty. I pulled out my laptop and started searching for answers, for anything that could help us. That's when I found the first clue. A letter from Grandma's estate, tucked away in an old email. It mentioned an inheritance for Layla, one I'd never seen. My heart raced. Something was wrong. And I was going to find out what. I sat at my kitchen table, the laptop screen glowing in the dark, that old email about Grandma's inheritance staring back at me. Growing up, I'd always been the invisible one in our family, the one who worked hard but never got the spotlight. My parents had a knack for celebrating Karen's every move while brushing mine aside. I remember being 16, winning a regional art contest. First place, a scholarship offer, the works. I rushed home, certificate in hand, expecting at least a good job. Instead, Mom barely glanced up from her coffee. "That's nice, Cynthia, but Karen just got into that elite dance program." Dad nodded, adding, "It's a big deal for her future." My certificate ended up in a drawer, forgotten. I stood there, smile fading, clutching the paper like it could hold my worth. It wasn't just that moment. When I graduated high school with honors, they threw a party. For Karen's engagement, same weekend. I spent my graduation night serving cake to her guests, my cap and gown stuffed in a closet. "You're so responsible, Cynthia," Mom would say, like it was my job to fade into the background. I learned to swallow the hurt, to keep the peace. Even when I became a single mom at 20, Raising Layla alone, they never offered help. But when Karen's boutique failed, they wired her thousands, no questions asked. I'd overhear them bragging about her entrepreneurial spirit while I worked double shifts to afford Layla's daycare. I leaned back in my chair, the memory of those years burning in my chest. My hands hovered over the keyboard, hesitating. I'd spent so long trying to prove myself, thinking if I just worked harder, they'd see me. But they never did. Karen's kids got new bikes every Christmas. Layla got hand-me-downs from thrift stores. I never complained, not once. I'd tell myself it didn't matter, that Layla's smile was enough. But now, with her life on the line and my parents sipping cocktails in Maui, it hit me. Their neglect wasn't just thoughtless, it was deliberate. They chose who to love, and it was never us. I scrolled through more emails, digging into memories I'd buried. Grandma had been different. She'd slip me $20 for art supplies, whisper, "You're my star, Cynthia," when no one else was listening. When she died 5 years ago, I was too grief-stricken to ask about her will. I assumed my parents handled it fairly. But that email mentioned a trust for Layla, specific, untouchable. Why hadn't I seen a cent? My fingers trembled as I typed Grandma's name into a search, pulling up old estate documents I'd saved but never read. There it was. A fund for Layla's education and medical needs, set up by Grandma's lawyer. My parents were trustees. They were supposed to release it when Layla turned 18. She'd turned 18 3 months ago. I pushed back from the table, my breath short. The numbers in the document didn't lie. Hundreds of thousands, meant for Layla, gone. My parents hadn't just refused to help, they'd stolen from her. I gripped the edge of the table, my nails digging into the wood, rage mixing with a sickening clarity. All those years of their praise for Karen, their excuses for me, their "we're not a bank" nonsense. It was a lie. They'd taken Layla's future and spent it on themselves. I wasn't just the invisible daughter anymore. I was the one who'd make them answer for it. The laptop screen burned my eyes as I stared at the estate document, the words, Layla's trust, blurring into a truth I couldn't unsee. My parents had stolen from my daughter, hundreds of thousands meant for her education, her health, her future. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands shaking, and paced the kitchen. The clock read 2 a.m., but sleep was impossible. I could still hear Layla's soft breathing from upstairs, her fragile heart ticking like a bomb. I'd been up all night, piecing together the betrayal, and now it hit me like a freight train. My parents hadn't just refused to help with her surgery. They'd spent the money that could have saved her. I sank into a chair, my fingers twisting the hem of my sweater. Grandma's face flashed in my mind. Her warm smile, the way she'd sneak Layla extra cookies and tell her stories about her own rebellious youth. She'd left that trust to protect Layla, to give her the chances I never had. I remembered the day Grandma died, how I'd sat in her old armchair, clutching Layla's hand, too broken to ask questions when my parents said they'd handle the estate. I trusted them. Stupidly. Now, I saw it clearly. Their new car last year, the renovations to their lake house, Karen's family trips, they were living off Layla's money. I reopened the laptop, my jaw tight, and dug deeper. I found an old contact for Grandma's lawyer, Mr. Hargrove, in an email thread about her will. My heart pounded as I typed a message, my fingers fumbling over the keys. "I think my parents misused Layla's trust. Can we talk?" I hit send before I could second-guess myself, the sound of the click echoing in the quiet house. I leaned back, my chest heaving, and noticed my reflection in the dark window, eyes red, face pale but determined. This wasn't just about money. It was about justice. The next morning, my phone buzzed. Mr. Hargrove's name lit up the screen. I answered, my voice barely steady, and he listened as I poured out the story. Layla's surgery, my parents' refusal, the Maui trip, the trust. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Cynthia, I've seen the trust documents. Your parents were never authorized to touch that money." My breath caught. He explained they'd likely forged signatures to access it, a crime that could mean fraud charges. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white, as he promised to pull records and meet me tomorrow. "We'll fix this," he said, his voice firm. I hung up, my hands still trembling, but not from fear anymore. Rage and purpose surged through me. I glanced at a photo of Layla on the fridge, her gap-toothed smile from happier days. My parents thought they could bury us in their lies, leave us to drown while they sipped margaritas. They were wrong. I wasn't the quiet, invisible Cynthia anymore, the one who took their neglect in silence. I was a mother, and I'd fight like hell for my daughter. I grabbed a notepad and started listing every detail I could remember about Grandma's estate, my pen scratching furiously. This wasn't just a spark anymore, it was a fire, and I'd burn their lies to the ground. Tomorrow, with Mr. Hargrove's help, I'd start building a case. For Layla. For justice. For the truth they thought they could hide. I stood in my bedroom, staring at the outfit laid out on the bed. A simple blazer and slacks, nothing flashy, but enough to look serious for tomorrow's meeting with Mr. Hargrove. The clock on my nightstand ticked toward midnight, each second amplifying the weight of what was coming. Layla was asleep down the hall, her breathing machine humming softly, a reminder of why I couldn't back down. My parents' betrayal, stealing her inheritance, dismissing her surgery, had pushed me to a breaking point. Tomorrow, I'd sit with a lawyer who could help me take them down, but tonight, my nerves were a live wire, sparking with every thought of facing them. I paced to the window, my fingers brushing the curtain as I looked out at the dark street. My parents' house was just a few miles away, probably filled with their usual laughter, planning their next getaway, while I scrambled to save my daughter. I could still hear Mom's voice from our last call, sharp and dismissive. "Handle it yourself, Cynthia." I gripped the curtain, the fabric bunching in my fist. Handle it? I'd been handling everything, Layla's illness, the bills, the sleepless nights, while they played favorites with Karen's family. The thought of their Maui trip, funded by Layla's money, made my stomach churn. I sat on the bed, my hands smoothing the blazer's sleeves, trying to calm the storm in my chest. I'd never confronted my parents like this before. Growing up, I'd always been the peacemaker, the one who nodded and smiled to avoid fights. But this was different. This wasn't about keeping the peace, it was about Layla's life. I pulled out my phone and reread Mr. Hargrove's email confirming our meeting. "Bring any documents you have," he wrote. I'd already gathered everything: Grandma's will, the trust details, even bank statements I'd found showing suspicious transfers to my parents' account. My hands shook as I stacked the papers, each one a piece of their betrayal. I glanced at a photo on my nightstand. Me, Layla, and Grandma at a park, Layla's tiny hand in hers. Grandma had believed in us, left that money to protect us. I could almost hear her voice, soft but fierce. "You're stronger than you know, Cynthia." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. She was right. I had to be strong now, not just for Layla, but for the part of me that had spent years shrinking under my parents' indifference. I stood, smoothing my hair, and practiced what I'd say to Mr. Hargrove. Calm, clear, no tears. I'd lay out the facts, let the evidence speak. My phone buzzed, a text from Karen. "Mom says you're overreacting, just drop it." I stared at the words, my jaw clenching. Drop it? They'd stolen from my daughter, left her to fight for her life while they lounged on a beach. I didn't reply. Instead, I set the phone down, my fingers steady now. Tomorrow wasn't just a meeting, it was the start of a war. I'd walk into that lawyer's office with every shred of proof, every ounce of resolve. My parents thought they could bury me in their lies, but I was done being invisible. I'd fight and I'd win. For Layla, for Grandma, for the truth they couldn't hide anymore. I walked into my parents' dining room, the familiar smell of roast and lavender candles doing nothing to ease the knot in my stomach. The table was set for a family meeting, but it felt like a battlefield. Mom sat at the head, her posture rigid, Dad beside her flipping through his phone. Karen and her husband Mark were already there, their kids playing in the next room. I clutched the folder of documents. Grandma's will, the trust details, against my chest, my palms sweaty. I'd called this meeting to confront them about Layla's inheritance, but the second I sat down, Mom's eyes narrowed, her lips pursed like she'd already decided I was the problem. "Cynthia, you're late," she said, her voice sharp, cutting through the clink of wine glasses. I wasn't late. I was 5 minutes early, but I bit my tongue, sliding into a chair. Dad didn't look up, just muttered, "Let's make this quick." Karen leaned forward, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the table. "So, what's this about, Cyn? You've been so dramatic lately." Her tone dripped with condescension, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. I took a deep breath, my fingers tightening on the folder, and started. "Layla needs surgery. I asked for help and you said no. Then I found out about her trust, Grandma's money. Where is it?" The room went still. Mom's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Dad's phone dropped to the table with a soft thud. Karen's eyes darted to Mom, then back to me, her smile gone. "What are you implying?" Mom asked, her voice low, dangerous. I opened the folder, sliding a copy of the trust document across the table. "This says Layla was supposed to get her inheritance at 18. She's 18, where's the money?" My voice shook, but I held their gaze, my heart pounding. Mom laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "You're digging into things you don't understand, Cynthia. That money's tied up in investments." "Investments?" I thought of their Maui trip, the new car, Karen's designer bags. My jaw tightened. "Investments like your vacation? Or Karen's new house?" Karen's face flushed and she snapped, "You're jealous, that's what this is." Dad finally spoke, his voice gruff. "You've always been ungrateful, we've done so much for you and now you accuse us." I wanted to scream, but I kept my voice steady. "I'm not accusing. I'm asking why Layla's money, her future, was spent." Mom stood, her chair scraping the floor. "This is ridiculous. You come here, throwing around accusations when we're just back from a well-earned trip." Well-earned? I thought of Layla's hospital bed, the beeping monitors, my hands clenched under the table, nails digging into my palms. "A trip you took while my daughter fights for her life," I said, my voice low but burning. Karen rolled her eyes. "Stop playing the victim, Cynthia. Maybe if you'd managed your money better." I cut her off, standing now, my chair wobbling. "This isn't about me, it's about Layla. You stole from her." The air was thick, their faces a mix of shock and defiance. Mom pointed at the door. "Get out if you're going to talk like that." I didn't move, my feet rooted. They thought they could dismiss me like always. But I wasn't leaving without answers. Or a fight. I stood in my parents' dining room, the air heavy with their stares, my folder of documents still open on the table. Mom's finger jabbed toward the door, her face twisted with fury. "Get out, Cynthia," she repeated, her voice like a whip. I didn't budge, my heart hammering, but my resolve solid. I'd come to get answers about Layla's stolen inheritance, and I wasn't leaving until they faced the truth. Dad slammed his hand on the table, the wine glasses rattling. "You've gone too far," he growled. "Accusing us of stealing? You're no daughter of ours." The words hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. Karen leaned back, smirking, her arms crossed. "You're embarrassing yourself, Sin," she said, her voice dripping with fake pity. "Just let it go." Let it go? My daughter's life was on the line, and they were acting like I was the problem. I took a step closer to the table, my hands trembling but my voice steady. "I'm not letting anything go. You took Layla's money, Grandma's trust. I have proof." I tapped the folder, the trust document glaring up at them. Mom's eyes flicked to it, then away, her lips tightening. Dad stood now, his chair scraping back. "We're done here," he said, his voice final. "You and Layla are out. No more family, no more help, nothing." My breath caught, the weight of his words sinking in, disowned. After years of swallowing their neglect, their favoritism, this was their answer, to cut us off completely. Karen's husband, Mark, finally spoke, his tone smug. "You should have been grateful for what you had, Cynthia. Now you've lost it all." I looked at him, then at Karen, who wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom's face was stone, Dad's red with anger. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. I wanted to scream, to throw the folder at them, but I held it together, my nails digging into my palms. "You think this ends it?" I said, my voice low, shaking with rage. "You stole from my daughter, and I'm going to make it right." Mom laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Good luck with that. You're alone now." Alone, the word echoed, but it didn't break me. I thought of Layla, her soft smile, her fragile heart. I wasn't alone. I had her, and I had the truth. I grabbed the folder, my fingers brushing the table's edge, and turned to leave. "This isn't over," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. Dad shouted after me, "Don't come back!" But I didn't look back. I walked out, the front door slamming behind me, the sound echoing in my chest. Outside, the night air hit my face, cold and sharp. I stood on their porch, my breath visible in the chill, my hands shaking as I clutched the folder. They thought they could erase us, but they were wrong. I'd always been the one they overlooked, but not anymore. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady now, and texted Mr. Hargrove. "They just disowned us. I'm ready to fight." My parents had drawn the line, but I was about to cross it, with a lawsuit they'd never see coming. I sat in my car outside my parents' house, the engine off, the night pressing against the windows. My phone buzzed in my hand, Mr. Hargrove's name lighting up the screen. I'd texted him minutes ago, my fingers still trembling from the confrontation, the echo of Dad's "Don't come back" ringing in my ears. I answered, my voice hoarse. "They disowned us," I said, the words tasting bitter. Mr. Hargrove's tone was calm but firm. "Cynthia, I've got something you need to hear." My heart skipped, my fingers tightening around the phone as I pressed it closer, the cold plastic grounding me. "I pulled the trust records today," he said. "Your parents forged signatures to access Layla's funds, multiple withdrawals, all unauthorized." He listed dates and amounts, each one a punch. $20,000 here, $50,000 there, funneled into accounts tied to their names. I stared at the dashboard, my breath shallow, picturing their Maui trip, Karen's new house, their smug faces at dinner. "It's fraud, Cynthia," he continued, "and breach of trust. We can build a case." I nodded, though he couldn't see me, my free hand gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. He explained the next steps: filing a lawsuit, freezing their accounts, proving the theft in court. "I found a paper trail," he said. "Bank statements, forged documents, even emails between your parents discussing the transfers." My chest tightened, a mix of rage and relief. They hadn't just betrayed us. They'd planned it, covered their tracks, thinking I'd never find out. I glanced at the folder on the passenger seat, Grandma's trust documents creased from my grip. "How strong is the case?" I asked, my voice steady now. "Rock solid," he said. "We'll get Layla's money back and they could face jail time." I leaned back, my head against the seat, the weight of his words sinking in. This was real. Evidence, a path forward, a chance to make them pay. I thought of Layla, asleep at home, her breathing machine humming. This wasn't just about money, it was about her future, her life. My parents thought they could crush us, disown us, and walk away, but this call changed everything. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore, begging for scraps. I was a mother with proof, a lawyer, and a fight. "Thank you," I said, my voice cracking. "What's next?" Mr. Hargrove outlined the plan: meet tomorrow to file the initial complaint, gather more evidence, prepare for a trial. "Get some rest," he added. "You're going to need it." I hung up, my hands steady now, the phone warm in my palm. I looked back at my parents' house, the dining room light still glowing through the curtains. They were probably laughing, toasting their victory, thinking they'd silenced me. My jaw clenched, a fire spreading through me. They had no idea what was coming. I started the car, the engine's hum steadying my pulse. I wasn't just fighting for Layla's inheritance. I was fighting for our dignity, our future, and the justice they thought they could outrun. I stood in Mr. Hargrove's office, the folder of evidence spread across his desk like a battle map. My parents' forged signatures, bank transfers, and emails stared back at me, undeniable proof of their theft. I'd barely slept, my mind replaying last night's fight. Dad's "You're no daughter of ours," Karen's smirk, Mom's cold dismissal. But Mr. Hargrove's call had shifted something in me. I wasn't shaking anymore. I was ready. My phone buzzed, Mom's number. I hesitated, my thumb hovering, then answered. "Cynthia, you need to stop this nonsense," she snapped. "No hello. Come to the house, we'll talk." I drove back to their house, the folder tucked under my arm, my heart steady but pounding. They wanted to talk? Fine. But this time I wasn't pleading. I was exposing them. I walked into the living room where Mom, Dad, and Karen sat, their faces a mix of irritation and feigned concern. Mom started, her voice syrupy. "Cynthia, we're family. Let's put this behind us." I set the folder down, the thud loud in the quiet room. "No," I said, my voice calm but cutting. "You stole Layla's inheritance. I have proof." I opened the folder, sliding copies of the bank statements and forged trust documents toward them. Mom's eyes widened, her hand twitching toward the papers before she pulled back. Dad's face reddened, his jaw tight. "This is a misunderstanding," he stammered. Karen leaned forward, her voice sharp. "You're blowing this out of proportion, Cyn. We didn't steal anything." I met her gaze, unflinching. "Then explain the $200,000 in your accounts, the Maui trip, your new house." I pointed to the emails, their own words plotting to drain Layla's trust. "It's all here." Mom stood, her hands clenched. "How dare you dig into our business?" I didn't back down, my voice rising. "How dare you steal from my daughter while she fights for her life?" The room went silent, their faces frozen. I continued, each word deliberate. I'm taking you to court, fraud, breach of trust, you'll answer for this. Dad's mouth opened, then closed, his hands gripping the armrests. Karen's eyes darted to Mom, who looked away, her lips trembling. I gathered the papers, my movements slow, deliberate. You thought you could disown us and walk away. You thought I'd stay quiet like always. I paused, looking at each of them. Mom's averted eyes, Dad's clenched fists, Karen's pale face. You're wrong. I'm done with your lies. I turned to court, and you'll pay back every cent you took from Layla. I stepped toward the door, my heart pounding but my resolve unshakable. Mom's voice followed me, softer now, almost pleading. Cynthia, we're your family. I stopped, my hand on the doorknob, and looked back. Family doesn't steal from each other, I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. I walked out, the door clicking shut behind me, the sound final, like a chapter closing. I stood on their porch, the evening air cool against my flushed skin, and felt a strange calm. They'd underestimated me for the last time. In the car, I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, but my mind was clear. The folder beside me held the truth, irrefutable, damning. I thought of Layla's face, her tired eyes bright with hope despite everything. This wasn't just about money, it was about showing her that we could fight back, that we weren't invisible. My parents' hypocrisy, their fake tears, their excuses, couldn't erase what they'd done. I'd exposed them, laid their lies bare, and walked away with my head high. The fight wasn't over, but I'd drawn first blood, and it felt like a victory. I sat at my friend Maria's kitchen table, the warmth of her home wrapping around me like a blanket after the coldness of my parents' betrayal. Maria poured me a cup of tea, the steam curling between us, while her husband Tom played a card game with Layla in the living room. Layla's laughter, rare and bright, drifted in, easing the knot in my chest. After walking out on my parents, I'd driven straight here, needing a safe space, a place where I wasn't the outcast. Maria slid the tea toward me, her eyes soft but searching. You okay, Sin? She asked, her hand brushing mine. I nodded, my fingers curling around the warm mug, but the truth was heavier than I could say. I told her everything. The confrontation, the forged documents, their attempt to play the family card after disowning us. Maria listened, her jaw tightening when I mentioned the Maui trip. They stole from Layla and then tried to guilt you, she said, shaking her head. That's low, even for them. I sipped the tea, the warmth grounding me, and glanced at Layla, who was giggling as Tom pretended to lose spectacularly. This was what family should feel like. Real, warm, no strings attached. Not the cold calculation of my parents' dining room, where love came with a price tag. Maria leaned forward, her voice low. You're doing the right thing, fighting for her. I nodded, my throat tight. I'd spent years trying to earn my parents' approval, shrinking myself to fit their mold. But here, with Maria and Tom, I didn't have to perform. They'd been there through Layla's diagnosis, bringing us meals, watching her when I worked late shifts. They didn't see me as the failure my parents did. They saw the mother who'd do anything for her daughter. I set the mug down, my fingers tracing its rim. I just want Layla to be okay, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Tom called out, Sin, your kid's a card shark. Layla grinned, waving me over. I walked to the living room, my steps lighter, and sat beside her. She leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, and for a moment the weight of the lawsuit, the trial, the betrayal, it all faded. I brushed a strand of hair from her face, her skin warm under my fingers. This was my family, not the ones who'd stolen from her. Maria joined us, handing Layla a cookie, and we laughed as Tom dramatically accused her of cheating. The room was alive with noise, with love, and I felt something shift inside me, a certainty that I wasn't alone. I looked at Layla, her eyes bright, despite the shadows under them, and thought of the fight ahead. My parents had chosen their side, but I'd chosen mine. Her, this moment, these people who showed up without being asked. I hugged Layla closer, her small frame fitting against mine, and whispered, We're going to be okay. She nodded, trusting me, and that trust fueled me more than any anger ever could. My parents thought they'd broken us, but they'd only shown me who my real allies were. With Maria, Tom, and Mr. Hargrove in my corner, I was ready for whatever came next. I sat across from Mr. Hargrove in his office, the morning light filtering through the blinds, casting stripes across the stack of legal papers between us. My hands rested on my lap, fingers laced tightly to keep them from trembling. Last night's warmth at Maria's house lingered in my mind, but here, in this quiet room with its smell of leather and old coffee, the reality of the fight ahead settled in. We were building a fortress, a legal case to hold my parents accountable for stealing Layla's inheritance, and I was setting boundaries to protect us from their reach. Mr. Hargrove slid a draft of the lawsuit complaint toward me, his pen tapping the key points: fraud, breach of trust, restitution. "This is our roadmap," he said, his voice steady. "We're ready to file." I nodded, my eyes scanning the document, the words, defendants, Margaret and Robert Ellis, jumping out like a blade. My parents. I pictured Mom's pursed lips, Dad's red-faced denial, and felt a pang, not of guilt, but of loss for the family I'd once hoped they could be. I pushed the thought away, my fingers brushing the edge of the paper. "What happens after we file?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. He explained the process, serving them papers, discovery, building evidence for trial. "They'll try to settle," he said, leaning back. "But we won't let them off easy." I met his gaze, my jaw tight. "No settlements, they pay back every cent, and they face the consequences." He nodded, a faint smile of respect crossing his face. I thought of Layla at home with Maria today, her surgery looming closer. Every step we took here was for her. I pulled out my notebook, where I jotted down more details. Dates of their big purchases, Karen's new car, their lake house upgrades, all tied to the trust's withdrawals. Mr. Hargrove added them to the file, his pen scratching as he murmured, "This strengthens our case." My hand steadied, the act of organizing facts grounding me. This wasn't just a fight, it was a wall I was building, brick by brick, to shield Layla from their greed. My phone buzzed, a text from Karen. "You're tearing this family apart, stop this now." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering, then set it down without replying. I looked at Mr. Hargrove. "They're already trying to guilt me," I said, my voice low. He raised an eyebrow. "They'll keep trying, don't engage." I nodded, my fingers curling into my palms. I was done with their manipulation, their attempts to make me feel small. I thought of Maria's kitchen, Layla's laughter, and felt a surge of clarity. My boundaries were clear, no contact, no compromises, just justice. As we wrapped up, Mr. Hargrove handed me a copy of the complaint. "We file tomorrow," he said. I tucked it into my bag, the weight of it reassuring. Outside, I stood by my car, the morning air sharp against my face. I wasn't just fighting for Layla's money, I was reclaiming our future, shutting the door on a family that had never truly seen us. My parents thought they could silence me, but this fortress, built on evidence, resolve, and love for my daughter, was unbreakable. I got in the car, my hands steady on the wheel, ready for the next battle. I sat in the courtroom, the wooden bench hard under me, my hands folded tightly in my lap as the judge's gavel echoed. The trial had stretched over weeks, each day a blur of testimony and evidence, but today was the climax, the verdict. Mr. Hargrove sat beside me, his calm presence steadying my nerves. Across the room, my parents sat with their lawyer, Mom's face pale, Dad's jaw tight, avoiding my gaze. Karen wasn't there. She'd stopped showing up after her deposition, where she'd stumbled over questions about her new car's funding. The air was thick, the room silent, except for the rustle of papers and the judge's voice reading the decision. "On the charges of fraud and breach of trust," he began, his tone measured, "the defendants, Margaret and Robert Ellis, are found guilty." My breath caught, my fingers digging into my palms. The judge continued, "They'd forged signatures, siphoned over $300,000 from Layla's trust, and spent it on personal luxuries. They were ordered to repay every cent, plus damages, and face 2 years in prison each." I stared straight ahead, my heart pounding, as Mom let out a small gasp and Dad's head dropped. Mr. Hargrove squeezed my arm, whispering, "We did it, Cynthia." I nodded, my throat tight, but the victory wasn't sweet. It was heavy, final. I'd spent years shrinking under their dismissal, believing I wasn't enough. Now the truth was laid bare. They'd stolen from my daughter, betrayed us both, and the law had held them accountable. I glanced at the trust documents on the table, the same ones I'd clutched that first night, now stamped with court seals. They were more than paper. They were Layla's future, reclaimed. I thought of her at home, waiting for me, her surgery scheduled next month with the recovered funds. As the judge adjourned, my parents stood, their lawyer murmuring to them, but they didn't look at me. I didn't need them to. I'd faced their lies, their greed, and walked through fire to protect Layla. My hands unclenched, the tension easing from my shoulders. I thought of Grandma, her fierce love for us, and felt a pang of pride. She'd be smiling now. Mr. Hargrove gathered his files, his voice low. You gave Layla her legacy back. I nodded, my eyes stinging, but I wouldn't cry here. I'd done what I set out to do, not for revenge but for justice. I walked out of the courthouse, the sunlight sharp against my face, my steps steady. The weight of years, my parents' neglect, their favoritism, fell away. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore, I was the mother who'd fought and won. In the car I pulled out my phone and texted Maria. We won, they're paying back everything. Her reply came instantly. You're a badass, Sin. Layla's lucky to have you. I smiled, my chest light for the first time in months. This wasn't just about money, it was about showing Layla we could stand tall, no matter who tried to tear us down. I started the engine, ready to go home and tell her we'd won, not just the case, but our freedom from their shadow. I sat on the couch with Layla, her head resting on my shoulder, the hospital's payment confirmation email glowing on my phone. The trial was over, the money restored, and her surgery was fully funded, scheduled for next week. The house was quiet, just the hum of her breathing machine and the soft tick of the clock. I brushed a strand of hair from her face, her eyes half closed but peaceful, and felt a calm I hadn't known in years. My parents' guilty verdict, their prison sentences, the repayment order, it all felt like a door closing on the pain they'd caused. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. I thought back to those sleepless nights digging through Grandma's estate documents, confronting my parents' lies, standing in court as the judge read their fate. Each step had been a battle, but it led here, to Layla's safe, to a future we could build without their shadow. I'd spent so long seeking their approval, shrinking to fit their world, but now I saw it clearly. My worth wasn't tied to their love. It was in Layla's trust, in the fight I'd waged, in the life we'd reclaimed together. I squeezed her hand, her fingers small but strong, and whispered, "We're okay now." She nodded, her smile faint but real. Outside, the evening sky was turning gold, the kind of light that felt like a promise. I thought of Grandma, her fierce belief in us, and felt her presence in this moment. I didn't need my parents' validation. I had Layla, Maria, Tom, and Mr. Hargrove, people who showed up, who saw us. I'd reclaimed not just Layla's inheritance but our dignity, our right to exist without apology. My hands rested on my lap, steady, no longer clenched. This was peace, not loud or vengeful but quiet, rooted in knowing I'd done right by my daughter. I looked at Layla, her eyes brighter now, and felt a surge of hope. The surgery would give her a chance, and the money would secure her education, her dreams. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was the mother who'd fought and won. And that was enough. Hey there, it's Cynthia. Have you ever had to stand up to someone you loved, knowing it might break everything? That's where I've been, fighting for my daughter, Layla, against the family I thought would always have my back. I took on my parents' betrayal, their theft, and won justice in court. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about proving to Layla and myself that we're worth fighting for. So what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Drop a comment below with your thoughts or share your own story of standing up when it counted. I'd love to hear how you fought your battles. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like mine, because sometimes the hardest fights show us who we really are. Keep shining, and never let anyone dim your light.